How many friends do you think you have?
All right. Well, the number would have been, well, it depends on what you think of as a friend, I guess, you know?
I
Like,
know. I had Jordan Peterson in my head. As soon as I asked it, I was like, well, it depends, like, what do you
well,
mean, my friend?
for sure, because it's about like whether we maintain those friendships over time or whatever. Because, uh, like, I went to a very small high school,
Hmm.
and like, I would hang out with any of those people if they reached out, and like occasionally one will be in town, and I have gotten together with them, you know. So in a way, that's like, oh, that's like 70 friends or something like that, you know. And then there's probably more if I add in a couple other classes, you know. I knew some people in that class, whatever, you know. But people I speak to on a regular basis, um, like weekly, that number was, you know, like under five until uh, hanging out in the corner here. And now it's pretty high, but it's like all the corner people.
I don't know why that just sounded funny to me. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna selfishly answer my own question, but I think I was homeschooled, so that's already a limiting factor on the class size of my high school.
Sure.
Um, but I played sports, so I had like teammates and things. But those things, they just, they morph and change and sort of fade away in the level of intensity. Like a lot of the people that I know and would hang out with, to use your example, are friends with history. You have sort of a friendship a friendship in the past to rely on in the present, but the present maintenance of those relationships is greatly diminished. We've got jobs and families and whatever, but um, I think my number of people that I talk to regularly has probably increased to be closer to like 15, maybe. But then maybe we're talking 3 to 5 people that I talk to every day, every other day. Um,
Yeah.
and we like to talk about the Dunbar number or whatever, and that's fine. That's a fine system to analyze your relationships by. But I guess so because we started talking about the corner and those relationships and how that's changed, how many friends you have that you regularly interact with. Um, what is it about friendship that you find you want, and what is it about friendship that you find that you need?
Yeah. So if you can max out the experiment of not needing anything from friendship, I feel like I've not fully maxed that out, but like I've explored a lot of that spectrum of like how little uh, friendship do you need in a way, with the caveat that I have been uh, married and living with someone for uh, a long time. I've been married for 13 years. I've been living with somebody for longer than that. And so um, I was never fully isolated, you know, but additional relationships or additional friendships, um, for a period, I kind of explored like how little of those can you have and still, you know, function. It's like the need, you know, how much do you need? Um, so you know, and I tend to think in kind of philosophical argument terms. So, like, you know, as soon as I hear that, I'm thinking, like, well, I mean, I could be a lighthouse keeper solo, probably. You know, maybe somebody comes to resupply me, you know, one day a year or something like that. Like, I think I could be fine like that, and or be okay that way.
And that's probably like a personality or like you versus someone else. Those things would be different.
Yeah, right. But it's like I'm almost trying to max out like the need, like actual need uh, in theory versus I guess me specifically, you know. So, but I think that is. It's funny though. Even in an example like that, it's like there has to be a system. There has to be a kind of like system of friendship, a spirit of friendship, like in the broader, it's like I could be the guy in the lighthouse, but even the lighthouse guy, like there's a role, it affects other people, you get resupplied, like people care that you're there, It's a little bit different if you're like the only person on Earth,
Hmm.
So like years ago, I remember having this discussion with a friend of mine, and it was about what if you were the only person on Earth, like left after a
Yeah.
cataclysm. And my friend was like, "There'd just be no point in living." I felt that there would be, but it was like this weird thing where you could have a relationship of some kind with life itself and with the people who existed through like what was left. Like I could still read a book and like
Mm.
having a relationship. It's one way, you know. I think my feelings have shifted a little on that, but so like need, I'm a little skeptical of how much we need uh, the actual. I guess it's like the material side of those friendships, but I think that there's something in the spirit of the friendships or something. There's those are where the need comes in. I think it's like needing to participate in whatever's going on with all the people on Earth and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily, I'm a little skeptical of like I need to talk to 5 people every day or else I'm not real. Like, I don't know about that. But as far as what I want from friendship, like, well, it's very much the, like, I started out calling it the Vervaekian friend because Vervaeke talked about how, you know, there's different kinds of friendships and you can have the acquaintance, you can have the buddy, you can have, we do things together. But there's also like, I'm really committed to you being wiser and you're really committed to me being wiser.
Mm-hmm.
I would move that to loving better. To me, like wisdom, I'm a little skeptical of wisdom as the meta virtue. I would say maybe it's love. If I'm committed to you loving better, you're committed to me loving better. Like that's a, a truer friend or something, a better friend. And so I really want friendships like that. And I also think if you love better than me, um, I look up to you. I put you a little higher in a certain kind of hierarchy, and it's like I got something to learn and aspire to, and that's a different kind of relationship. But I still think it is friendship, but it's like I'm trying to learn and grow from our relationship.
Yeah, I like that. That was making me think of there's a proverb about the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and spending time around Christians that talk about that verse, you will understand the caveat that I'm about to give about it doesn't mean to be afraid of God and all of this stuff, but it's like I think that what you identified there with love being the higher meta virtue, more fundamental, is exactly that. Like if you substitute the word awe instead of fear, similar connotations in this context, it'd be like uh, the awe of God is accessible through person to person relations. Like, it's a pretty simple chain of logic. Like, being an image bearer of God would indicate that to you. So when you truly allow yourself to encounter another person, there is that fear of God, awe of God reverence that comes through that. And that's the beginning of wisdom, i.e., it's more fundamental than wisdom as such. And wisdom, I think you're right to identify a qualm there, because it's like there's a lot of rationalist sort of enlightenment thinking around wisdom versus something touchy feely like love. And that's our baggage. We need to deal with it. But it doesn't mean that what you're talking about isn't more real. That's too many negatives. What you're talking about is more real because people are real. Like, we're fundamentally some of the most real things, and we're extremely deep and complex in that way that is a particularly strong conductor of the image of God, in a way that just experiencing life isn't. I think that might be where your friend's coming in too, saying like, oh, if I was alone on an island, I would probably just kill myself because what's the point? And it's like, that also misses the lower frequency end of the spectrum, where it's like, you actually can exist in solitude. And that's an important aspect, I think, of developing yourself so that you can bring to bear in these relationships some of that loving you, loving me, that brings up our capacity to love, raises both of us.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of the journey has to do with. I don't know that I have a better term than codependency. So this is kind of a maybe therapeutic, whatever, addiction term, codependency, as opposed to interdependency. And so I think I come from this a more codependent background. And what's interesting about this is that you can be like, I would say that if you're trying to be too close to people, if you're trying to, you can almost even like try to dissolve your identity into other people, and you don't you get a little blurrier and blurrier. Or if you're trying to completely isolate from people, so it's basically, if you're trying to connect to people out of fear, or if you're trying to avoid people out of fear, that's actually, I would call that codependent both ways. And interdependent is about trust. But if you're coming from the more okay, so there's some more therapeutic terms out there. There's these things like, anxious attachment versus avoidant attachment, and anxious avoidant, which is like the most confusing one. And so I think if you're more on the anxious side, then exploring isolation can be a real teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you were probably on the more avoidant side, then, maybe like, I don't want to say forcing, but like maybe, artificially going into some more social interaction would also be a teacher.
Yes.
So I think for me, part of the thing of even the reason I'd be having conversations about like, well, what if you were the only person on earth, is like, I don't really know where the line is between me and other people. And I was like trying to find where that line is. And then a lot of relative isolation was helpful in a discovery process of what that line is, and so that's how you would, I mean, yeah, it just makes a lot of sense of my journey of like, or my experience of being, the number of people I'm talking to is very, very low. And then I'm like hanging out online, talking to people and all the time and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a guy, Robert Mulholland, who wrote a book called The Spiritual Journey. And he talks about this in regards to spiritual practices, spiritual disciplines, and how if you are more extroverted, then you most likely need to dive into something like a solitude practice. And if you are more introverted or isolated by nature, then you probably need to dive into something more communal in nature. So it's like that will always be the case, that your growth edge is where you're least comfortable. And I think that one of the interesting things about friendship or a community is that you can begin to be drawn into those things and have a degree of like intrigue or interest in something that isn't your natural bent, like, because I think that's why I was asking, what do you find that you need in a friend? What do you find that you want in a friend? Because I think friendship has largely become optional. And so you get to choose not only the people that you're friends with, but how many, and if you have any at all, in a way that, like, I don't know. This is like, whatever, being critical of myself. In a village, in a tribe, in the jungle, I don't know how isolated you could really get. Like, you're
Yeah.
pooping behind your tent, and so is your neighbor, and there's nothing in between you. It's like that you're really in it together in all types of ways. And so if you're gonna try to be isolated, it's gonna be weird. People are gonna notice, like, hey, where is he? Like, it's time to go hunt together or whatever. And so there really is no solitude in the way that we've created almost an entire society based on, like, you could just do whatever you want. Independence is sort of the third option between codependence and
Yeah.
interdependence. Like, actually, I don't need you. And so once you get to that point where you have like all of your consumerist products and whatever, like, this is a thing with our economy. Like, if you can make people isolated to the point where they don't share a lawnmower, then everybody on the block needs to have their own lawnmower, right? And so this is like, if you get into the weeds of why it is that we are the way that we are, it's because it's profitable. Like, somebody wants you to not have a friend to lend you a thing, because then you have to buy your own. And so there's this weird, like, independence spirit that drives us towards that. It's not like we're uncomfortable having our own stuff. We enjoy the, like, even if you wanted to lend it to somebody else, that's a much better feeling than going and knocking on their door. Hey, can I borrow your lawnmower? That makes you feel like a loser. So there's this, like, spirit of optionality that comes through that as a consequence of the independence.
Yeah, I think that's even why I think this is part of why the this like addiction language seems to actually fit, because like codependence as a term originates with the idea that there's people who are dependent on like a substance, like have a substance abuse problem. There's people dependent on, alcohol or whatever. And then there's these other people who are codependent with them. So it's like they don't drink, but they're still somehow dependent on the same thing. But I think the way that we use it today is more like, well, the person who's using our system to isolate and to do certain things, it's like you're very dependent on the system. I mean, if your existence is like, how dependent are you on the supply chain? If you're like, this I'm like door dashing and whatever, or I'm having things delivered to me, it's like, you're completely reliant on this system, but in a way that you're like dependent on it, not interdependent with it. Like, it's not like you participate in a meaningful way, or even if you do, you can just be overly dependent on that system. And then it's like a lot of us are, or maybe we're all, we're all to some degree dependent on that system. And, and I used to think about that too, because like, I think as we've become more dependent on that system, there's been, this rise of the sort of dream of like being totally off the grid and like, well, I'm going to be totally independent, or like these myths about the, this guy like lived in the woods for this like experience, like 20 years and whatever. But it's still like, if you look into the story, it's still like, yeah, but I mean, he had to steal stuff from the local thing. And also like, a military didn't like come in and take over that area. Like, it's not so clear that you can draw this boundary between you and the rest of humanity so
Yeah.
easily. So I think that there's a sense maybe that we're a little that we're overly dependent on this system that maybe maybe it's that we don't feel like we participate in it enough, or that it cares enough about us that we view it as interdependence. So it's almost like we start to naturally view it as a kind of drug, something that doesn't care about us back, that we just sacrifice to or something. But I think all that's at play there.
I want to read this. I was telling myself I wasn't going to read it. It's a little bit of a longer paragraph, but it's from this book called A Place Called Community by Parker J. Palmer, and he was a Quaker, and I found him through Brennan Manning quoting something of his. He says, "Political scientists have long known that community in all its forms plays a key role in the distribution of power. Families, neighborhoods, work teams, churches, and other voluntary associations stand between the lone individual and the power of the central state. They provide the person with a human buffer zone so that he or she does not stand alone against the state's demands. They amplify the individual's small voice so it can be heard by a state which turns a deaf ear when it does not want to listen to them. In such communities, we gain skill at negotiating our interest with the interests of the group. If these communities decline in number or in quality, the condition known as mass society sets in. Mass society is characterized not simply by size, but by the fact that the individuals in it do not have organic relations with one another, only a common membership in the nation state. In mass society, the person stands alone against the state, without a network of communal associations to protect personal meaning, to enlarge personal power, or to teach the habits of democracy. The loneliness of mass men and mass women is a measure of their political impotence, and given that impotence, that inability to act together, the step from mass society to totalitarianism is short indeed. In a totalitarian society, the state exercises careful control over the number and content of intermediary communities so they will not empower individuals to resist the state. In a democracy, as community begins to wither, the conditions are ripe for totalitarianism to take root."
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I think of that as the what I call the spirit of no middle, or the spirit of no spirit, or the spirit of death. I think of those as all the same thing. Because what I hear there is that it's like if power's the head and the people make up the body. Although when you're talking about the state, it's a little weird because it's like a little topsy-turvy. But still, when there's no connective between the two, it's just the individual completely alone, and then the like one state with no middle. That is a kind of death. But I also think that like lately I've started to think about how the way that we get there, like when we were talking about how you can be that isolated, like when the system goes that way and it becomes almost like each individual is completely separate, but they're part of this one body of the state or whatever. I feel like the way you get there is actually that the cosmic background religion is still running some of that stuff. It's still running some of the interconnective spirit of friendship or whatever it was that was holding things together. And you have to go really far before that starts to break down. And when that breaks down, it's not clear to me what happens then. Because it's like when we were talking earlier about this system has to be in place to allow us to isolate and as opposed to like in a village where everyone would be interconnected. But if you go far enough, then it's like that system breaks down. You don't trust anybody else, and then it's not clear to me that those kind of local village type connections don't naturally start to spring up again, or just that, I guess if you get to the point of totalitarian state, then we kind of know. I mean, we've run that experiment a few times, and there's mass casualties, but then it can't sustain.
Yeah.
So eventually you end up with the survivors and the spirit of whatever it is that actually interconnects people has to sort of come back in some way, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the supremacy of the spirit of life over the spirit of death, because like the spirit of death would be like an Ouroboros. It consumes itself. It can't ultimately have victory, which is, I don't know. There's probably a lot of books about that and whatever, but I just feel like that makes me an optimist. I guess I'm hopeful in the spirit of life, in a way that isn't like hopeful that the Bills win a Super Bowl, because that will never happen apparently. But the hope is in like that eventual entropy, like death eats itself in a way that life doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that definitely seems true. But the caveat is like, well, I mean, if we're speaking theoretically, then I guess like theoretically, you could kill everybody and it would have to start over on like a microbe level, or
right.
Like the sentient machines turn or not sentient machines, but the mechanical machines turn artificially intelligent machines turn everything into paper clips, but eventually they break somehow and then it starts all over at the microbe level again. Theoretically these things can happen. It's just unclear how the trade-offs really play out.
Yeah.
And I guess I mean, in a sense, we're running the experiment, and there's no way to skip to the end and know how it's going to
come. What did you mean when you said cosmic background religion? Like, what do you mean by that in terms of what you were talking about?
Yeah, so like Sam Titteman did these series of videos where he was talking about these studies that were done in the 2000s, I think, on young people and what their sort of religious beliefs were, and or theological beliefs, and that led to this term, the I forget what it was, the something background something, and I just changed it in my mind to the cosmic background religion, like the cosmic background radiation, because that just seemed to capture it more, because that was a very like specific study about specific theological beliefs that were kind of in a Christian coded context. But and that's where that moral therapeutic deism was like what he named what people really thought. But there's probably all kinds of implicit beliefs that everybody has that are a lot harder to bring out in questionnaires. And so I guess cosmic background kind of captures it all somehow.
Yeah. So it's the connective, non-material beliefs held by everyone in the cosmos. Something like that. It's like an average of religious perspective.
Yeah. And then like, I think about it when you're looking at a certain populations or certain groups or certain whatever. I mean, maybe it's just global at this point, but where you can notice trends, and it's like, have we kind of become a death cult at scale? Like maybe we have, because the spirit of life is like dripping out of the culture, and we're moving further and further from this, from the spirit of friendship or something. And you can like notice the trajectory through your lifetime, and even going back before then. Like the meaning if you want to call the meaning or meta crisis like that, you could. And then, um, but then I think that you can also notice how that seems to play out and respond and react. So I feel like we've seen some things where the spirit of life or friendship is like starting to respond to this like dripping. You know, it's like I've talked about how I've gone through a couple levels of doom. So like one of my like AI doom things was just discovering the website Less Wrong, seeing that a lot of very powerful and intelligent people were using this website to like do philosophy, that they seem to be extremely preoccupied with artificial intelligence and its creation. And I implicitly thought, after reading some of the writing, like, you know, I think this is a death cult, basically. Because I think what you're trying to create is not likely to serve the spirit of life.
Mm.
It's almost like you're trying to replace yourselves with these artificial beings. I have a lot more doubt of that artificial intelligence can be conscious or sentient. It's not, you know, I'm just skeptical. But even if I wasn't skeptical, it's like, yeah, but way before we'd get to that point, you could, this seems like it could lead to bad places. So I get kind of like doomed out about that because I'm like, hey, nobody is talking about this. These are the most powerful people maybe in the world. This is what they're working on. It's kind of like discovering, you know, people are working on the nuclear bomb or something like that. But they're not just working on discovering it, they're working on like discovering it and deploying it at scale at the same time. And you're like, that's insane. So you get freaked out. But then it is weird how, as the years go by, eventually a lot of people are talking about that. And a lot of people are noticing that that seems like a bad idea. And then even a lot of the people who were arguing and talking on Less Wrong start to take the position, hey, I think this is going to kill everybody, whatever. And you're like, well, at least there's some reaction. You know, at least there seems to be some interplay going on. And then I get a little less doomy, you know. So it's like the... and I think that there's a lot of ironies here where, like, the spirit of friendship has to exist for a lot of, you know, like, even going on that website and talking to people is like running on this spirit, even as that spirit is kind of draining. But like, how far can that drain before people are like, you know, before there's like a strange reaction?
Yeah, I'm thinking like there's an aspect to the cosmic background religion that is linked to the spirit of life. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. And honestly, like if you want to call it, I mean, you could see this through the history of religious tradition at large. Every different religion that there's ever been has had some idea of like order and chaos, and I would say those are largely analogous to life and death. And so then there are different ways that they take shape in the world, and some religions, you know, deify death or chaos, and some don't. And you know, like there's, you know, we've played these things out for a long time, and some of them go away, and some of them maintain their integrity across time. So there's ups and downs of like they fight each other and they do very their group things, but then they kind of reform back to like, well, it's really more about praying and not killing people. But like there's a constant battle. That's what the yin yang symbol is two forces fighting each other. And so I guess the whole symbol is the cosmic background religion in some ways, and then you just have to deal with that and understand like, yes, sometimes the black snake is winning and sometimes the white snake is winning, and you're pulling for the white snake, but you never know. Like sometimes the doom is actualized and really, really bad things happen. But ultimately, there's still like even in that symbol, there's a little darkness in the light, and there's a little light in the darkness, and Uh, it's it's a mixture of components that make up this background religion.
Well, yeah, and I think to me the there's a lot of parallels to addiction because um, like this brings in some like my best way of talking about this brings in some symbolism stuff that's kind of Matthew Peugeot inspired, I think. But the idea of like the purpose of death, like insofar as death serves the good, insofar as death can serve life or be part of life or is part of the spirit of life, it's about renewal. You know, it's like how you sleep, and that's kind of a lot like dying, but it actually serves life, and then you're able to live. You wake up the next day, and this is a lot of what's going on in addiction because it's like, you know, getting drunk or something like that is another one of these things that you kind of go into more formless state. You go into a more chaotic state, but this can lead to like a renewal, or you could just perpetually seek renewal. That's kind of what the cycle of addiction is. It's like you don't get, you know, drunk one time or take, LSD one time and have some, you know, tripped out experience that ultimately could lead to a renewal. You just perpetually seek more renewal. But the more and more renewal you're seeking, the more and more you're just worshiping death. And at a certain point, you know, it breaks. So, like, at a certain point, if you're an addict, say, you're either going to die, you know, or you're going to stop using the drug, or you're going to find like an equilibrium of like, you know,
The John Daly. Yeah. That's interesting too. Like there's just limits on things. I feel like in my study of God, I have identified that aspect of his character. Like he's got it, you know, like they're either going to die and he can work with that, or they're going to find that equilibrium, or they're going to snap out of it. And in all three scenarios, God is involved and participating with each and every person. And that's like hard to grasp because it seems like maybe he's not doing a great job, you know, because there's some really bad people or people in really bad situations. But yeah, I think I, I was just thinking about Peterson identified this yin yang in the story of Exodus in the way that the cloud by day and the fire by night is that little thing that sort of draws your attention. So in the daytime, a cloud is the dark spot in the light side of the yin yang, and
right.
it draws your attention. Even if you think about like being in the desert, you're gonna want to be following a cloud. You know, like please give us some shade here so we can survive this. It's too bright and it's too hot. But then in the nighttime, you have the opposite problem. Like you need a fire and you need the warmth and you need the light. And so it's like a constant, like a pendulum or something. That's the wrong metaphor, but like there's a cycle of the force that is operating in a larger capacity during your time, and the thing that is calling your attention, the smaller spirit, the more subtle spirit that is drawing your attention and maybe even like shining forth to you or calling out to you. And I think that it's important during a time largely characterized by isolation that we maybe explore connection and community and the ways in which we're not equipped to pursue it or not even identifying it as something valuable to pursue, so that we can explore that as an option, and then maybe it'll flip around again, just like the cycle of the day. Like during the sun or during the day, you have a cloud, and that's dark, and that's provides you the shade and the shelter, and that's good. And then in the night, you need the moon or the stars to like provide you with some sense of meaning and direction. And so the spirit of the age cycles like just like that. And so identifying the counter proposal and being maybe willing to explore it rather than just fitting into the light or into the darkness of your time, you know.
Well, yeah, and like when you break those down into, like when you think about light and dark as life and death, then you get this thing of, then you're talking about the spirit of light, or, I've been using the term the spirit of life. And so, that kind of raised the question, what's a spirit versus one of the things, like, but it's clear in those examples that, we're talking about balance is a big part of this. Like, life and death, like it's weird to think about light and dark and life and death, and then to think, well, the spirit even means life, so you're really saying like the life of life or whatever requires a balance of life and death in a weird way. And
I think sorry, can I just say, I think that's associated with the problem of the individual and the collective that you were identifying, trying to figure out where your boundaries are. I think that's exactly what you're identifying between life and death. Like if there is no death, then what is life? That's a real question to ask. And I think even especially I'm just most familiar with Christian conceptions of these things. It's like God is infinite, but you are not. And there needs to be some delineation between you and God to some extent, so that you can have relationship. Like this is a fundamental concept in the scriptures. Like God wants to walk with you. He can't walk with you if you are him, So the goal isn't that you would be light itself and the spirit of life itself, because that's not who you are. It's not who you were created to be. You were created to be alive, of the spirit of life, but not the spirit of life. And so that distinction is extremely important. And it leads to a conversation about idolatry. I'll bring that up in a second. I just wanted to interject that I have never read the Martin Buber stuff, but I think that's like the I, thou stuff, like how you identify yourself with the other, but you need to also have a concept of yourself in order to do that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, I think part of the personal experience of, or the individual experience of just meeting people and connecting with another person. I mean, any confrontation with another person or just encounter with another person, there's this question of like, are they the snake? Or are they, or are like, are they above me? Are we the same? Are they the snake? Like, do they just want to eat me? Make me become them? Or, do they want to help me? Like a, loving parent type figure? Or, what is this relationship? And there is risk, there's emotional risk, there's physical risk, and these things depend on all kinds of stuff, depend on the kind of the conditions. Because, if you like trust the rule of law and all these things, you'd be like, well, I have some like relative physical safety depending on where I know that I am. But there's emotional safety. There's all the, and then there's the fact that I don't have to have this interaction at all. I can, corporations can sort of, fulfill my needs, and I don't need these individual connections and all these things. And this is like a lot of what I was struggling with and trying to understand. And what's interesting is I've kind of come to friendship as the core thing from it being very difficult and my not understanding what it was. And I guess it's more coming at it through the spirit of what it is, like through the spirit of friendship or something. Because I would just notice these patterns. Like I would like be writing films and stuff, and like writing stories and trying to come up with ideas. And I would like explore these ideas of like, okay, dysfunctional family, and there's like a story about these two sisters, and like they just can't make it, like their relationship work because they've taken on these roles, and the roles seem sort of oppressive and dysfunctional. But when they give up the roles and encounter each other as basically like friends, there's an opportunity for like something that actually is balanced and can work. And I would just think of all these stories like that. And I didn't notice the pattern of the stories necessarily until later. That's like, oh, here's people who like they were dating and then they broke up, but they still have to live together because they don't have enough money to like move out on their own. And then they become something like friends. And that's the story. Like, why do I keep telling this story? And I think it was like a trying to find this whatever balance and seeing something in the what I'm calling the spirit of friendship that is that balance or represents that balance. And I think I'm kind of naturally drawn to I don't know, like certain ideas like non-dualism, like non-dualistic ideas and stuff. I think they make intuitive sense to me. Maybe because my dad was bipolar, and it's like I, like if you're in this bipolar like household or whatever, balance becomes intuitively sought. Balance becomes, maybe it's even overly important. Like you could be too, like it has to be the perfect balance or I won't do anything. But like that becomes really highlighted because you just have seen the imbalance.
Yeah.
And then it becomes really obvious like, hey, too far that way is actually also bad.
Yeah.
Too far this way is bad, but this is actually also bad. So I think that's led to like this gravitation towards non-dualism and these certain ideas. And I think that there's an aspect, or like I think the spirit is non-dualistic in a sense, because it's not one thing or the other thing. If it's like the relation between them, or this structural functional organization between them, I think it has to be non-dualistic because it's not one or the other.
Yeah. I love that, and the personal connection to that is really insightful. I feel like a lot of people might assume like it's better to be on the manic end because you're like more active or you're more productive or you're doing all these things, you're more energetic, and then other people might be like, whoa, I don't want to be anywhere near that because that gets crazy, and they see the problems with that and move towards like the anhedonic side. Like, I'm just going to try to check out, maybe be a little bit more avoidant of things. And you can see obviously connections to all types of situations. I was going to say denominations within Christianity, let alone religious differences, like different religious communities. You stand in your camp and you look around and you say, well, obviously there's massive problems with being Islamic or being Catholic or being, PCA versus the more conservative one or whatever. It's like you can see clearly the problems that they have, but you have no idea the problems that you have, and you're suffering the same things as they stand in their camp and look at you and say, well, you're opening yourself up to all these problems. It's like that's one of the things I think friendship can afford, which is what you're saying. So this is the way I've been saying it, thanks to OG Rose with this language around enclosurists and people that just like build their systems around themselves. And so it's like you can't really take anything new or from the outside because you've built an enclosure around some area of land or way of being that you enjoy. And so if you say something outside of what you're enclosed in is valid or true, then you open yourself up to all types of things that might not be valid, might not be true. And so it's really just safer to say this is all that there is, and everything outside of this is automatically invalid, which isn't true. But I was talking to my wife about this. It's like it's really extremely obvious to me that that's like what relationship is to crack open your enclosure and allow someone else to crack open their enclosure, and then it's the reciprocal opening of John Vervaeke's language. And so to the extent that you allow that to happen, you will also find this spirit of friendship or spirit of life, because you can't grow if you're enclosed. That's just kind of obvious. Like if you grow outside of what is acceptable in your enclosure, then you become the thing that's invalid. And so then you have to go outside. Like that if it's a group that's rigorous in maintaining its enclosure, you will be kicked out because you're now no longer a part of what's inside. And so I think that a spirit of friendship allows for growth to take place, and it must necessarily. And obviously, growth would be associated with the spirit of life. Like there is
Yeah.
no world in which stagnant something being stagnant is associated with life. There's a stability that is being sought in the stagnant world in the enclosure that is associated with life. You need stable conditions, even if there's seasonality. You need some amount of stability in order for life to be possible. That's structure, that's order. But then if you go too far and you prioritize the stability over essentially the growth, then, hey, that's a new branch, cut it off. And if you do that enough times, the plant will die.
Yeah. So like that means that in, like there's a sense in which encountering the other is like encountering the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And there's another sense in which, anytime you eat fruit, you die because you can't maintain, like, you can't stay the same. Okay.
You are what you eat.
Yeah. So, like, even, and I think, there's, like, you could look at the story in different ways, and there's a sense in which, like, a sense in which if you eat fruit in the spirit of life, then it's good, and if you eat if you eat fruit in the spirit of death, maybe it's not good, but like there's a sense in which people encountering even the other is like encountering the tree, and that eating any fruit is like dying because you can't stay the same. Like, if I eat something, it does change me. It becomes part of me. Some of it becomes part of me. Some of it does not. Everything is like this. Attention is a kind of consumption. So anytime you pay attention to anything, this is of course how mind control and things work that are not in the spirit of life, and that's kind of what we mean by that. I think it's even why the term is mind control. It's like the idea that something lower than the mind is controlling the mind, and the mind is supposed to be on the top. So I just think of all of those things coming together, and that's part of why it can be difficult to build trust in these things, and to be willing, like you were talking about, like the person who creates this enclosure, and it's like, well, this is just what I like, so like why would I question this? Why would I take anything from outside of here? But that's a kind of death too. That's actually a kind of codependency too. So it's not necessarily that easy to explain, like, well, you have to sometimes eat fruit that could kill you.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I feel like Christians
but you really do, like, or else you'll die. So it's like,
right.
Well, how do I find that optimal grip? How do I find the balance of those things? It's like, yeah, right.
That's life. Yeah. I feel like Christians have the story for that, like the two garden parallels, Jesus in Gethsemane and Eve in Eden. It's like, it's all there, the tree, the cross, and Jesus is asking for God to take the cup from him, but he's got to take it and eat it. And Eve is asking, well, she's not asking, but she's receiving from the snake the thing that connects these stories. And ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to just think about the consequences of the Garden of Eden, that immediately there's this self-consciousness, and then all of a sudden, like, the desire for the enclosure creeps in. So it's like the encounter with the other is what provokes this need for self-defense and the desire to reciprocally narrow, like limit the experience of the other person, or limit their experience of you in a way that ultimately is causing a furthering of that same sense, like, of threat or danger that you're experiencing in the presence of another person. But if the conditions are right and both people are operating in good faith or in love, like you said in the beginning, then that allows for the reciprocal opening, both parties opening to one another, which is exceptional. Like there's just nothing like that, like me too. That's kind of how I feel about a true friendship, is just that phrase being like real and true and felt by both parties. Like, wow, yeah, you've had a totally different life than me, but I've had similar experiences. Maybe not in kind or in content, but in spirit, and that mutual shared experience of spirit is unifying.
Well, yeah, and it's like, I guess when we talk about it abstractly, which I think is extremely informative, if you can like apply the abstractions to the specific, it is very useful. But it can also, that application can be difficult too, because it can seem like, it seems like what we hear a lot are pretty extreme examples. It's like, so that's why you should take ayahuasca.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You like eat the poison, like, this will like, and there's a sense in all of that it's like, you'll just have to do it one time, and then like, it's not really about learning the balancing spirit and how to, really cultivate this over time. It's kind of like, well, I don't want to change except when I have to, and then I'll just, take a drug or something, and I'll get the change I need, and then I can stay the same some more. But like in my life, it was like, I just think of this example where I was like, I was obsessed with music and writing songs and things and songs. All I would listen to were very similar types of music. It was like the most, lyrical, deep music I could find. So like, most of the artists I liked committed suicide, but I loved their songs. They were great. This is what I listened to all the time. And this was like this little bubble of, sad bastard music. Okay. And then I was hanging out with my, one of my few close friends at the time. He lived far away, so I didn't get to see him that much. But I went to visit him, and he was playing Taylor Swift. And he's playing Taylor Swift in the car, and he's trying to explain to me how, like, awesome this music is as music, okay? And I just wanted to, like, jump from the car. Like, I'm imagining leaping from the car. I don't want to even have this hit my eardrum, But I love my friend, okay? So then I, get back from the visit or whatever, and I'm just thinking about how uncomfortable that was. But like, why does my friend love it? Like, what is he getting out of this? So I basically was like, I'm just going to listen to this until something happens, like until I can understand, right? And so that was like a psychedelic experience, and it was just listening to music you don't like. Why would I listen to something I don't like? I'm me. This is not me. Why would I ever listen to this? But I let that in, and it was, there was a breakthrough there.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, she, this was older Taylor Swift, probably 1989. So it doesn't really apply to her later stuff. But
yeah,
it was like, she is like leaning into joy in a way. There's a bravery to this. There's something really important here that, all these great poets who are mostly dead, didn't really have,
Yeah.
And I'm not the same person, okay? Just because of, like listening to this pop star. And then you can start to be like, well, I should try this with other things, And then I was like, I'm just going to listen to Nickelback until it makes sense to me. And it's like, it does,
It's good.
And you start to expand who you are,
Yeah, I have this theory about food that anybody that doesn't like something, they just haven't had it prepared in its best way, like by someone who's actually talented or whatever, like You just learn through experience that you don't like it, but then you cease exposing yourself to it because of preference, and then you're incapable of understanding like why someone would like it. I don't like ketchup in general, but I'm imagining that if somebody like made it homemade, there's a way that it could be prepared that I would enjoy putting it on things. Like I like tomatoes and I like vinegar. You know, there's nothing stopping me from enjoying the component parts, but the way that it's presented by Heinz or whatever is
Yeah.
not cutting it
Yeah.
for me.
Well, and like maybe, and I felt like I've had to learn too. It's like you start to see that you can expand, but at a certain point, it's like this is starting to feel like there's not even a self at all, or like it's getting too. Not that there's not a self in a certain sense, like in a like not that there's not a self in like a Zen sense, but that there's like it's getting way too blurry.
No
It's getting
boundaries.
like
Yeah.
yeah, no boundaries. And then you have to like start constraining again. So it's really like, like it's reciprocal opening and narrowing because, you know, the point isn't to try to integrate everything. It's like I need to figure out how I can make heroin work for me. Like, you don't need to do that.
I think
like,
we might have a good beat on
Yeah.
how to integrate it into our lives.
yeah, at a certain point there's a limit.
Yeah.
And those may be individual, but you want to find, what, and I guess you aspire to the right limit on everything, some kind of more objective truth or something, or abstract truth, better term. You might aspire to that, but then there's the reality of what you can actually integrate and not integrate, and what chances you want to take and how much you're willing to trust and what you should trust versus not trust. So it is funny, like I've been also obsessed with movies my whole life, and that's led to like a lot of understanding about how they work. And then people will like recommend new movies to me, and the vast majority of new, especially movies I see, are the Heinz ketchup, for me. And it's very hard to see how this could be integrated in a way that is any good for me,
Yeah, I mean, some things are Cheetos. They could be enjoyable at a certain level, but they lack substance altogether.
Yeah, and at a certain point, well, I guess like one way into the spiritual or the religious is the like I want to integrate the spirit of proper integration. I want only the best thing will do. I don't want to settle for
Yeah.
these lower things, and then you're kind of you kind of enter into a story.
Yeah.
And you're on this journey of trying to find the balance of balance or something.
Yeah. I don't know do you know Ethan Kahi from
Yes.
The Corner? So he talks about health in this way. And for him, he'll use the example of like junk food and food in general, and just how like there really is so much bad stuff in food. And so eating the bad food is contrary to the spirit of life or the spirit of health. And so he's tried to identify those things and find alternative food sources that are healthier and promote his well-being and his wife's. And that's been a process for him. And then obviously, like, you can apply this to everything, like your clothes. This shirt is probably harming my hormones right now as we speak. And it's like, there's really so much corruption all across the board. And then there's like fighting between groups about, well, really you should be doing this kind of exercise, and you don't even need to worry about your diet. Or really, you don't need to exercise at all. You just need to worry about eating these 3 macronutrients in this proportion. And then you'd argue about that. Well, this one doesn't count as macronutrient, all of this. And so the disparity of opinions is perplexing. And then also the fervor that's associated with, we did it, we figured it out, I have a way to do this, to live out, to integrate the spirit of life in my life, and so you should adopt it. And usually there's some capitalistic like branding element to that, where it's like, and so you should subscribe, and so you should only listen to me, and you're trying to make people dependent, which is disgusting and totally against the spirit of life and friendship, like we've been saying. And so I guess I'm angling at the idea that we get things right, sort of universally, is a little bit, makes me squeamish. That's kind of what I'm talking about with friendship, is like I want to be open to people in such a way that they can offer me something new and of value that I can see aligns with that larger, more higher, like the higher spirit of life or of love or of friendship. So whatever I encounter another, I want to be open to the point where I can say, yes, what's good in this, I do want to adopt. But there is a process of discernment of being like, I just don't care about that. It's like, I think that's perfectly fine and reasonable. And like, I don't know. I think there's probably, Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus that have gotten to a place where they're like, I am connected to that spirit of life that you're talking about through my thing as much as I can be, and you're connected to it through your thing as much as you can be. And I know this gets into crazy territory because Jesus said he's the only way and whatever. But like, I really think that we're like, in good faith, we're all trying our best. And if you are, then you'll get there. It's not necessarily all roads lead to heaven. There is maybe one road, but it's like there's lots of these sort of side roads and side streets that all are leading to that road. And if you just are honest and seeking that truth enough, I guess, then you will end up on that path, that same path. There will be different words and there will be different whatever. It's like the blind guy's touching the elephant, but you'll get a hand on the elephant, and that will be life-giving and life-sustaining and all of these things. So it's important to me that you don't knee-jerk close off to other people just based on difference of language or those types of differences that we tend to shut people down with.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Such a great point. Because you have to bring in that discernment subject. Because even like the example of realizing that all the food is poison. Because, and even realizing, all the food has not only a bunch of different poisons, but like just the amount of food that has sugar alone, sugar and how it basically acts as a poison, right? And then realizing, and there's a whole hierarchy of reasons why that sugar is there. And there's a whole, basically mafia of that possibly goes all the way to the top of the whole, corporate structure of the global
the cigarette
economy.
guys got into the sugar business. And yeah.
So you can realize all of that and be horrified by that. But there's this issue of like, how poison is it? Because, all food is actually poison to some degree. Some of it can't be integrated. It's not all good for you. Some of it's bad, right? And the process of digestion is a process of discernment of what these things are, okay? But also, like, the amount of time it takes, like, well, I have to grow all my own food, and, like, how can I even get, they don't even really want you to get the seeds to the stuff that, and before you know it, that could be your entire life. And then you're like, I got the food right. And then you like look at your family or whatever, and you're like, oh, I didn't get any of this right. This is a mess. Right. Yeah. I just like maximize this one thing.
Yeah.
Because these are huge trade-offs. The amount of attention it takes to, it's like, or I could just eat all this poison and try to, it's like maybe I could literally just never work out, eat a ton of poison all the time, right? And just try to love people as good as I possibly can and spend all my attention on that third one, that might have actually a lot better of an outcome. I mean, I would argue that it would have a lot better of an outcome,
Yeah,
potentially.
maybe more generalizable or something. Like you can get a little bit autistic about like food, for example, or it can be media consumption. It can be theological. It could be,
Because there
uh,
is a hierarchy there, where it's like,
yeah,
obviously, too much poison, you will die, and then you can't do anything. But there's a lot of wiggle room there, and like, how much should we maximize this thing that's kind of more about the stomach than it's about the heart or the head, And like, this is much more what it's like to be in life, is like all these different trade offs, and they all require, they require a meta discernment between them. And part of the reason that I say I think love is more the meta virtue is that I actually think love is a better way, agape love is a better way of understanding discernment than a word like wisdom,
Hmm.
which, so something that had a huge effect on me is Jonathan Pageau's Image of Everything. Have you seen that
the Cosmic
drawing he
Mountain.
did? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I just viewed that as, one aspect of it is I saw it as a profound image of agape. I thought this is the best way to illustrate love, which is you, because there's an angel raising up the water of life, and there's another angel pinning down the Leviathan. Okay. This is the water of renewal versus the Leviathan that's going to eat you. Okay. And I saw this is what love is. It's like, this is how you love a child. You raise up what's good in them and you pin down what's bad. You have to do both at the same time. There's a dualistic element. This is the part that's up here, and this is the part that's down here. This is the yang, this is the yin. There's a non-dualistic aspect of doing it both at the same time and in balance, that it's good. Because if you just raise up what's good in somebody, like if you just raise up what's good in your child, it's actually child abuse. And if you just pin down what's bad, it's child abuse.
yeah,
The only way that it's good is if it balances those two things. And I think so. So I was saying, so I think that that's actually a profound image of agape, but also of discernment, because this is how you discern anything. You have to raise up what's good in it and pin down what's bad at the same time. I think if you tend to be one of those, if you tend to be a penny downy, then you should probably start with the opposite one, because you'll just never get around to it. But if you have to do both those things, and I actually think that that's why Jesus says to love your enemies. It's if you don't love your enemies, okay, then you can't discern your enemies. So you're not even going to know who your enemies are. Okay. And you're not going to know to the degree that they're your enemy, because you have to love them, which is you have to raise up what's good in them and pin down what's bad to even know what they even are or who they even are.
yeah,
This is another thing that brings me back to, to love, friendship, and the importance of discerning what is the relevant thing or what is the good. And that's like the process of doing it.
yeah. I think what I'm hearing there is like we label people and we move on. So you do have a category for enemy, but you don't have a category or you don't have the discernment necessary to identify who it is that your enemy is. It's the thing behind the thing. And so we address the thing that's in front of the thing. And we say, we have a protocol for it. So this is somebody who's from outside of my enclosure. This is somebody I'm in, they're out. And so, you treat them a certain way. And Jesus was radicalizing all of that, saying like, top to bottom, everyone has individual sovereign value, and including children, which were their social status was like not on the same tier, to say the least. And then slaves also, nowhere near the normal people of the family or society. But then also, like at the top end, like the king, the rulers, those people are brought down to this median level of people. That's it. And it doesn't mean that you don't have all of these different characteristics and these different, like uh, material differences. But it, I mean, yeah, like there's no slave or free. There's no male or female in Christ. This sort of thing. There's no ethnic differences because he's identifying like the thing behind the thing, that it means to what it means to be a person. And so what you're saying is we operate with sort of an idolatrous attitude or disposition towards our labels, towards our the glasses that we're looking at the world through. It's like if you're a penny downy person, you're prioritizing the pinning down of what's monstrous or bad. And that's a good thing to do, but it's not a good thing to make ultimate.
Yeah, only
and the same right, and the same with the incorporation or the integration of what is good, the encouragement of what is good. That's a great thing to do, but it's not the ultimate and not the only. And so the thing that you're identifying, I think, that is ultimate is this more equanimous spirit of agapic love, which is able to take both actions and simultaneously operate them, which requires encounter, because that's the eating of the fruit. Like you have to digest the other person and take into yourself the other person in order for you to address it properly. Otherwise, it's an idol in the sense that it's dead. It's not really them. It's your conception of them or projection. And that sort of thing doesn't allow for relationship to happen. And I think, let me read this. There's a little quote here. It's from the same book. He says, "In false communities, the group is always superior to the individual, while in true communities, both individual and group have a claim on truth." And so if you've listened to Ian McGilchrist, he'll talk about the left brain being a little bit more either or, and the right brain being a little bit more both and. And so I think that's a pretty good analogy to what we're talking about with the raising up and the pinning down.
For sure.
And the reality is that it shouldn't be one or the other. That's what our left brain wants to do, is say, well, since there's two hemispheres, one of them has to be better. But in reality, it needs to be both and either or. And so that is the proper alignment of things, which I think gives a nod to the right brain as like, yeah, we need to do both things. So the right brain maybe takes a little bit of precedence here with the both and. That could be better in some hierarchical way. But it doesn't dismiss outright the existence or validity of the either or thinking.
Yeah, I just I find the idea of microcosms and macrocosms to be one of the most useful ways to understand reality. I think it's just a core aspect of reality. So right away, I start thinking of the body. Because if you talk about a community, it's very similar to talking about a person and the mind, or the head and the body, and the relationship between those. It's like, is it like the feet are not as important as the head? Because I can cut off my feet and I'm still alive. Okay. Just feet, not alive. Okay. So they're not as important. But I wash my feet. So I decide to use this is the torso level of the spirit. It's like in the spirit, I actually wash and care for my feet because they serve an important function in my entire person, right? And there are things that my body cannot integrate. Okay. And they're digested and passed out from my body. Okay. But even there has to be a kind of discernment about even what my body can't use. Because what attitude should we take to like our own excrement? Because it's like, should we worship our excrement? No. Should you eat your excrement? Definitely not, right? But should I make my whole life against excrement? Like all we're gonna do is take, like, all my life is gonna be about getting my excrement. I'm gonna burn it. I'm gonna bury it. I don't know. My whole life is about trying to get rid of excrement, and then I'm just not gonna eat it all. You see where I'm getting? Like,
Yeah.
At a certain point, you can make an idol of even hating the bad. Like, I'm just trying to pin down that which my body cannot integrate, and that's all I care about.
That's what I was trying to say about like Christian conceptions of light and life and all of these things, like eternal life versus death. It's like, well, if you can't integrate death into your worldview in its proper place, that's the whole thing. Then you'll actually always suffer the consequences. Like there's some proverb thing about a jailer is in the same prison as the people he's imprisoning. Like, so if you're like holding a grudge against someone, you're there too, holding them in that grudge zone. And that's what I'm talking about, is like you will never be free from the spirit of death if you can't integrate it properly into the hierarchy of spirits. Like, it does play a role, and that's the thing. Like, I guess I'm saying that in encouragement to encounter the other, right? Because like something in the other person is going to be excrement or death.
Yeah.
And that's the risk that you take by engaging with them, But it's also the thing that affords you the potential for growth. I mean, the same thing happens, like you need to eat in order to grow, but if you eat, then you're going to have the excrement. And as you grow, you're going to have to learn how to operate and function your growing, maturing self in a way that is congruent with the spirit of agapic love. And so, do you really want to grow, or do you want to just stay a baby? Because then then it's not all on you, and you can just be taken care of, and there's not so much responsibility. But it's like, no, that's not proper either. So you need to move upward into this space while at the same time dealing with all of the mistakes and all of these things that, like the Penny Downey thing is really, it takes people dark places because they repress all of these things and they exclude all of these things. And yet in the process of that, I think they lose the sense of potency, agency, responsibility that's necessary to operate on the positive end of the spectrum, to do good things.
Yeah. I think it goes to just such a profound misunderstanding of what love is. It doesn't help that we conflate different kinds of love in English, if we're an English speaker. But it is a profound misunderstanding, because I think people hear, love requires attention. It's true. So you hear like love your enemies, but it is so interesting because love also means not giving attention. Love actually includes both giving attention and ignoring. Both are required. And this is like where I think just love can sound like it's just this positive, it's like just paying attention. But it's like, if all you do is pay attention to your kids, again, is this love? Like, that's like the helicopter parent idea. That's like this smothering kind of love. You also have to ignore. And this is the issue where, it makes sense that people are like, the bad is bad. Why wouldn't I want to pin it down? I'll just maximize pinning it down. And it's like, but if all you're doing is, even if all you're doing is pinning down excrement, you actually worship excrement at that point, because you don't ever ignore it. You only pay attention to it all of the time. That's worship, actually. That's not even love, you know? So to love properly just always is going to come back to this balance. And that's why, that's why you have to love your enemies. You have to actually love everything in a way to even know what is relevant or what is real. Or
yeah, that it occurs to me that phrase comes from the Sermon on the Mount, and he's talking about being like God, and he's saying like God lets his rain fall on everyone, and he lets his light shine on everyone without discrimination. And so it's like he's not making the judgment between his friends and his enemies, uh, and then sort of adjudicating that by dispensing his goods to them in kind. Like my enemies don't get anything, and my friends get everything. There's a universality to this relationality where he moves outward towards everyone with the same spirit and in the same measure, like without withholding anything from anyone. And that is what provides the transformation that you might desire in a world that you have enemies against you. Like you would prefer them to not be against you. You'd prefer them to be with you properly, like if you're properly oriented. Because I do think there is a part of us that wants enemies. Like we want to know that we're not like them. That gives us a sense of identity and even a sense of direction. It's the not excrement thing. Like what is the worst? Excrement. Who are they? The worst. They're excrement. And so you just start doing that to everyone. And the worst part of all of this is like I was thinking about this earlier with the pinning down and the exalting thing. It's like you pin down everything in yourself so that it never manifests in you. And then that just doesn't work. But it's a fear of yourself. And so then you don't want to grow. That's it in a nutshell. Like understanding that there's parts of you that are unknown to you is why we withhold ourselves from people. We don't want to grow through relationship with them. And we've experienced in the past how we've failed because of self-expression, to put it in that term for some reason. It's like you are something that you don't want to be at some level, and you try to just exclude that from your life rather than integrating. And this is all like psychoanalyst stuff too, like integrating the anima or the shadow or whatever. But like that's who you are. And so if you can't find the proper location for that, I think it does, for whatever reason, it just floats up the hierarchy and it becomes the spirit that animates you. And you're like, then you're really in a bad place.
Yeah, I think maybe even a thing that's kind of misunderstood in that kind of Jungian psychology is actually that this process of love and discernment is a process of digestion, and this is actually the only way to excrete parts of yourself. So as much as it might focus on the need to integrate parts of yourself, it's actually the individuation. I think in a Jungian sense, it would probably also be the only way to excrete parts of yourself, because you would have to identify them as not you and in need of excrement. And that a lot of people can, like you could set up your life around basically people can set up their whole life around just not being excrement. Like your whole life is just about what's excrement and what's you. And I'm not excrement. I'm not excrement. The one thing I am is I'm not excrement. It's like, well, part of you probably is. Okay. And it should be excreted, actually, that part. Right? And like maybe a whole lot of you actually is in a deeper spiritual way. And you ought to excrete all of it, So I don't know. Those are just some things that came to mind.
Yeah. So okay. So that to me, that's screaming the topic at hand of friendship. Like you need to have friends that can come to you and say, "Hey, don't do that shit anymore." Like that's not okay. And if it's only one person, it's like, I don't know. But if it's like 3 to 4 people, maybe like a person you really respect in your friend group, then you're going to change because you're going to be like, oh yeah, I know I trust these people, even if we don't have any differences of the food that we eat or the Taylor Swift that we listen to, but I can respect the fact that something in them is rejecting something in me, not me, but something in me, to the extent that I trust their spirit of friendship, spirit of love. Like I trust them to pin down in me things that need to be pinned down and not reject me. I think that's like the value of friendship. And in many ways, like you talk about a postmodern conception of the world where it's like just kind of there is no objective truth, but this is oversimplification, but like so whatever works for you, like your subjective take on the world, if you could just organize yourself in a way that's productive and functional and consenting adults and whatever. It's like you can thrive that way. That's the idea. Because there is no meta virtue, right? That's the argument. You need to sort of, even though implicit in all of this is like what works for you is sort of like it's going to develop something like a meta virtue ultimately.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So you're trusting that spirit in your friend to say, hey, in this context, you can't be like that. Maybe alone by yourself, but in our friendship, I need you to not be like that so that we can maintain this friendship. And so if that friendship has any value to you, and it should, because it's helping you to be better and more aligned with the spirit of life, then, in an ideal way, then you would sacrifice yourself in order to be a part of that community. And so when we talk about what you need and what you want, I feel like that would be an example of something that you need. Like if you just are locked in on the ultimate version would be locked in on your perspective of things. Be like, actually, it's great for me when I just steal from people.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you run out of people to steal from, but you could run the course of life thinking that's a good way to live.
Yeah. Best case scenario is you make a real friend and you're never the same again.
Yes.
And that means that you die a little in order to live more fully, and it's like there are, I mean, it can, so I think the real work is discerning like who those friends are and like, how can I trust, them, and what does it mean to trust and engage in this relationship or engage with the spirit of friendship in this way and open yourself up to actually be, destroyed on some level. But it's the most important thing in a way, because it's like, this is the only way to raise up what is actually good within yourself and to pin down or get rid of the things that really shouldn't be there and aren't necessary, and this is, basically the way that I have come out of isolation is by like, I guess, like falling in love with friends in a sense of being like, these people so clearly have good things that I don't have. And so I'm going to continue to trust them, even though it is scary, or even though, I don't know, they could let you down and stuff, there's risk. Mm-hmm. But you keep playing that game, and then there's a sense that I'm actually growing now. And that's the reason, to me, that is so much more of an animating spirit and reason to do it. Because if you're trying to like get to some arbitrary kind of goal that came from you to begin with, then you're not really trusting and you're not really opening up. And if you're doing it out of fear, like, well, I just don't want to be alone, I just want to feel like I'm liked, or whatever. It's not that those things are just bad, but if that's what's running the show, that to me, that's a kind of stomach running the show, and that's out of the hierarchy. But if you can do it in the spirit, then like, this is going somewhere and getting somewhere. And that's vital, and it is perhaps what has been diminishing from culture at large for a while. But I think that there's reason to believe that it may be turning around or could turn around. And even if it's not going to turn around the culture at large, don't you want it to turn around for yourself? I do. So that's what I'm going to do.
Right. 2 quotes on community from the Parker Palmer book. He says, "Community will teach us that our grip on truth is fragile and incomplete, that we need many ears to hear the fullness of God's word for our lives." And then, separate quote, he says, "Do not commit yourself to community, but commit yourself to the God who stands beyond all human constructions. In that commitment, you will find yourself drawn into community, and in that commitment, the difficult lessons of community can be born and transformed into a larger and truer life." And I think that's what you just said.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. He also says this is to put it in the language of friends, capital F, that's the Quakers. He says, "Community happens as that of God in you responds to that of God in me. And the affirmation that there is that of God in every person must mean more than I'm okay, you're okay." I think that that's one of the things. Like, we just had our 4th of July party at my parents' house, and there were less people this year, I think, because it was on the 4th instead of sometimes we do it like on the weekend of the 4th or whatever. And so it was actually like a huge less is more situation, because this party is like sometimes probably over 100 people, just everyone we've ever met ever. And so it's a lot of like those light, quick interactions where you're just sort of bouncing off of each other and saying like, "Yeah, we just had a baby. How's it going?" "Well, great, obviously, because we don't have long enough time to say how hard it's been on our marriage or whatever." Like, all of those shallow but positive conversations. And that's really draining for me. I don't want to do that at all. I was listening to a Howard Stern interview, and he said he's so bad at parties because of that. But he's like, "I just decided I'm going to sit and I'm going to talk for as long as possible with whoever I come across." So he just sat on his couch, and somebody sat down. I think it was Louis C.K. And they had a conversation for an hour, at this party where you're supposed to be doing the bouncing around, talking to everybody thing. He was like, "I'm just going to do what I'm good at and what I value." And I was like, that's what I'm going to do at my 4th of July party. And so we sat down and we started talking to these people. They're friends. I did some work with one of the guys, and I grew up with another one. And their wives are there, and we were talking about like setting boundaries and in relationships with in-laws and different things like that. And it was a great conversation, and there was so much like personal vulnerability that was afforded at the campfire at the 4th of July party, which I'm used to being like, "Hi, yes, sorry, I have to go talk to this other person now." And it was just, it got deep and good. And I feel like it went so far beyond "I'm okay, you're okay," because "I'm okay, you're okay" is, we good? We cool? Like, if you're not okay, I don't want to be around you. And if I'm not okay, you obviously don't want to be around me. And that's totally false. Totally false. Because that's every other light, skippy surface conversation that we have is, how's work? It's great. How's your life? It's great. How's your relationship? It's great. When in reality, you're a little conflicted about where you live or what you're doing with your life, or could you have amounted to more? How your relationship is with your wife, with food, with substances. It's like all of these things are under the surface of every single person, but we try to live on that "I'm okay, you're okay" ideal. And I think that as a society, we suffer these anxieties generally. Like, everyone has a deep sense of unease about how things are, the doomer thing that you were talking about before. And maybe some people aren't aware of the things that you're aware of, so you feel more doomery than some people. But across the board, I'm worried about what people think about me. That's a very common one. And yet, we don't want to address any of the things underlying those anxieties, because we have to break through this facade of "I'm okay, you're okay" into a place of like, actually, there's excrement in me, there's death in me, there's death in you, we're all going to die. And so you end up with all these weird like
Yeah,
religions or
yeah.
isms to sort of like say, well, I'm a this kind of person, that's how I deal with it. I'm a this kind of person, that's how I deal with it. And then you don't talk about those things. It's like worse than politics to talk about religion. So anyway, actually talking about it is, I think, friendship and the key.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I hear that surface level thing as like it's like literally the surface. It's because it's really just, hey, you're part of the body, right? Like we're part of the same body. Like you are part of the body, right? You're not like a cancer. You're not the other, right? Like we're both in the same. And that's why even they'll be like different kinds of social codes and just be like because some people view the body as more political. So they're like, hey, you're in the body, same body as me, right? Like we're in the same body. Okay. And then like that's all we need to say because it's kind of functioning on this fear of encounter with the other. And I think that that's like the negative spirit I hear in that is that it's not that it's wrong to do that because in a sense like you just walk around your community, there's a kind of like, hey, we're in the body, right? You're in the body, right? Okay. And but it is interesting how like if I look at it from a fear perspective, I see how it's like, hey, if the mailman delivers the mail and I'm like, hey, thanks for the mail, like, we're in the body, right? And he's like, I'm going through all this stuff. I might be like, what do you want from me? Am I being gamed in some way? Is this a trick? You know? But what's interesting is if I imagine someone far better at loving than myself, if I imagine the saintly person, if I imagine even the wise old man or whatever, and I imagine the mailman venting some stuff to that person, I imagine them just very deeply considering it and okay, I guess we're having this heavy conversation right now because you want to be part of the body, but you're struggling to be part of the body, and I want to help you be part of the body, and so I guess this is what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I would ask, like, or I would point out maybe that the I'm okay, you're okay conversation is what we think the body is. That's the mistake that we're making.
Right.
The being okay. But it's actually just the being that mailman is struggling with. Right? And so the being is, in fact, the body. But the I'm okay is sort of whatever. I'm calling it a facade because I feel like very often it's not the case that people are entirely okay. But also, the type of people that always have a problem, and that's like another form of mask. Like, I'm not a real person. I'm just a bunch of problems, and that's also not good. But there's a substance to being a part of the body, and I think it is the being thing. I was even thinking, like, walking around town saying, I'm okay, you're okay, hello, how are you, good, that sort of thing is like, it is the process of identifying, like, we speak the same language, we're both alive, like the spirit of life is sort of manifest in me. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
acknowledging
Yeah.
one another, even just in the fact of breathing, conscious, that sort of thing, is a base level
Yeah. It's not.
interaction, right? And yet, if we say, like, I love being a part of this community where we never say anything except hi, how are you, good, okay, bye, then that's the thing of making something finite and limited in its scope and application, making that ultimate and
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
supreme.
Yeah. Because it's not really life to just know what's the body and what's not.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot more to it.
Exactly. This is the thing with, like, confessional communities of Christians. It'll be like, and I don't, whatever. Every group of people has this sort of manifesting in it, but it's like, we get together and we talk about theology or doctrine, and we say, so is everybody on board with that? Because if you're not, then we know where to show you the door. Like, there's
Yeah.
this is what holds us together. This is what it means to be a part of the body. Where in reality, I think that anything that can get us past the informational level, the propositional level, down into the participatory level, That's where it's actually true that we're united. And that's the scariest place to be, because it means everything that's wrong with you is everything that's wrong with me. And that's like, I think that's what friendship means.
Oh, yeah? Can you unpack that a little bit more? The everything that's wrong with you is wrong with me as the foundation for friendship.
It isn't factually true that everything that you struggle with, I struggle with, but it is potentially true and relevant. It's descriptive. Your life and your shortcomings and your skills, abilities, whatever talents, those are potentially true of me, and not just in an abstract way, but like just given the fact that we both have human bodies, I could do anything that you could do, to varying degrees of success.
Yeah.
But like this is why people hate successful people, because everything that's true about them could be true about you. Like you have the capacity for the level of success that they've achieved bound up in you with different expressions and whatever. So I'm saying it's sort of like a Petersonian, like you need to look at the face of evil and say, that's me. I'm the guy. Like I'm the guy doing the war crime.
Yeah, and I think that that's really difficult for people, because there's a fear that we're gonna take in, like in a way we're like taking in evil, or we're trying to integrate too much evil by thinking this way. But that's where I think like hierarchy really does help, because it's like part of what I see like this is my blood, this is my flesh. Like part of what I see in this is like, hey, the part of yourself that's a cannibal, that's just like the most base instinct you have.
Me versus you.
Like the part of you that's a cannibal, eat me. So, and it's like, really, like, and it's like, why are we obsessed with psycho killers and stuff? It's like, there's got to be some similarity somewhere. It's not like everybody tunes in to who watches Dexter or whatever and is like, I just or Hannibal Lecter, I just fundamentally can't connect to this character. I mean, he eats people. That's crazy. I don't understand. No, like everybody completely understands and connects with the characters. It's a little weird. And even if that's just on a spiritual level, like, well, of course you eat people. There's an erotic nature to attention itself. So you eat them even if you don't eat them. But it's like maybe on some dark level, those things are part of at least your physiology. Like you said, like you could,
Yeah.
The instinct isn't totally foreign somehow.
The concept of potentiality, I feel like now that I brought it up, I'm seeing it back into the rest of our conversation. Like even just what you're talking about, like the parts of yourself that we repress and we don't allow to manifest in our lives, those are potentials in many cases.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think there's something about being open, like the reciprocal opening type of thing, being open to another person that allows you to sort of like mutually define what potentialities arise. So like there's a mediation process that takes place through relationship. Actually, I just coined this new term, koinopoesis. And so it's the communal making and sustaining of something. And I think that that's one of the ways in which God makes the world with us. Like our relationship, it applies to all relationships. You are koinopoetically making something. That's kind of redundant, but whatever. I've just made it up, so give me a break. In a way that you can't do it by yourself. You don't have the capacity to make something by yourself. a reality. And so like you're sort of at the mercy of yourself alone. And that's the thing maybe that makes it so hard to be in relationship with other people along with the stuff that you don't want them to know about you, that you don't want to know about you. All of those evil potentialities and even the
Yeah.
good potentialities. You don't want to bring those things into being because by yourself you can't control them. And even in relationship, often you struggle to control them properly. But with that agapic love, and this is like a marriage thing, like they always say the three chord strand is not easily broken or whatever. But like if you bring in a third member to any relationship, there is like an arbitration that happens. And that's what arbitration is. It's like,
Yeah.
this is good and this is bad and this is how we're going to do this, you know? And so I think that relationship is the thing that allows for your potential to be formed properly, to be hierarchically ordered in such a way that that which is good is elevated and that which is bad is, pinned down.
Oh yeah, and like it. I've just been sitting here thinking about how like aspiration is a process. This is a process of taking in and putting out, and digestion is a process. So even to take in things and excrete what is bad and not needed and not part of you is a process. It's not just some given thing, and that even like the sense of which there's things that shouldn't be paid attention to at all, perhaps there's a level of evil that's like one shouldn't even consider but even that metaphor, if you think about it, it's like, well, it's like looking into a hole. It's like at a certain point things are just dark and I actually like don't have to go in there. That like like it's like, do I really need to try to figure out what's lower than cannibal and integrate it?
Mm.
Maybe there's a limit and we just go, okay, anything past that. But part of the issue is that even things you ignore, like it only works if you can actually ignore them and live fully. If you are going to eventually confront them, then some process is going to have to figure out what can be taken in and what can't, And so those are just some of the things I see at play. And somehow that it was feeling informative of how, like, insofar as we take in things that are bad without our control, we have to be in a process of love and discernment in order to digest them. And that's true of food, but it's true of anything that you pay attention to. And it requires being more open than a closed off person might want to be. But it also might require being a lot more closed off than somebody who's too open would like to be. Because at a certain point, and this happens a lot honestly, it happens a lot with maybe people that have a lot of power in our world. You can take the right drugs, you can get really, really open to considering anything, and that's good. Like some things should be excreted,
Mm-hmm.
and so it just brings me back to the idea of that being a process, and that and process being the spiritual part of something.
Yeah. Process. Yeah. I just came across the idea that openness has a limit, and it's wherever it encounters closedness. And so ultimately you can't integrate that, meaning openness is closed. And so there's an interesting problem here. And then closedness obviously has a limit. That's like the whole thing. And so it needs to be a little bit more open. But openness ultimately is a little bit more closed than it thinks it is. And so that's sort of the point where they overlap. And so I was talking with this to my wife about this, and we're just dealing with some closedness in relationships. And it's like, we can't change the other people, but hopefully in our openness in a specific domain of life, we might be able to encounter them sort of on the wall of their enclosure, maybe, and say, like, hey, what's this wall here for? And what can we do to understand you better, so that we're not so afraid of this wall that seems to be like limiting us in a way that we're maybe not excited about being limited. And through that process, what happens is the people that are open and the people that are closed get to understand that they're actually just people, And so I'm closed about being closed. That's definitely that's a thing in my life. You could hear from my all roads lead to heaven thing. Like it's a very difficult thing for me to be closed like that, except to the closed people. That's like very obvious to me. I'm very closed about it. No, I'm not thinking that. And so I need to grow in my ability to perceive them as people. This is what's really crazy about everything that we've been talking about today. It got pretty abstract, but like practically, friendship is the process of being a person, encountering another person. And that's the goal. And it means that there's going to be a massive process of like what it is to fail at friendship, like to become responsible for another person's, holding space for another person to be and to be safe. That is a huge responsibility. And so you're going to fail because you fail at everything that you're trying to learn how to do. And in that, someone else is going to have to then hold space for you to be a failure and then kind of lift you back up and dust off your clothes and say, hey, it's okay. We all fall down. And then you just keep doing that for, in perpetuity, and you see where it goes. Like, but the main point here is that it doesn't go to a fully open place and it doesn't go to a fully closed place because those places are temporary. They're not ultimate. And so relationship almost exists on like a more fundamental level than anything that we construct to sort of hold relationships within.
Yeah, and it's so important that it's toward life, because there's a kind of friendship that's like trying to integrate that which can't be integrated, and or kind of reciprocal narrowing. I mean, like somebody could say like they're friends with a drug, and people can use people like a drug. So it goes a lot to the how that friendship really functions. And we're talking about the spirit of friendship. It's like we are talking about something beyond. We're talking about the way that the spirit of life how does it, is it separate from the spirit of friendship or the spirit of true friendship? The friendship that is for life and life-giving. And it's like, we could all just be like ants on the ground, like the lowest level, but, we're friends. We're ants together, and we do things together, and we stay part of a body, and, that's not bad. But I do think that you need this like towards life aspect, which is like, well, we're people and we're not ants, and we can actually become a brotherhood and sisterhood, and we can actually form a body of a full person. And that means that there's a aspect that's directed upward and for life. And that's what we should be doing and pursuing with friendship. And, I think that that's also trying to do that, trying to participate in that is how we affect the spirit of the times. And this is actually the best possible thing you can probably do to affect the spirit of the times, because, you try to affect these things that are on the more, the level where you just have less actual agency. The spirit of this is very powerful, and how it can include more and more people, and then you become a brotherhood, and it's just like, we can become much more of a person as a group, and as a world, okay, potentially. Not like
microcosm, macrocosm, yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so, yeah, that's what I'm focused on.
That was a great conversation, and really, it's a segment of a conversation that I feel like, if you'll allow me, we'll continue to have in private and maybe in public, because
Sure.
I think that we're talking about this the spirit of the structure of friendship or something like that, and
Yes.
so it's
Yeah.
like, it's very good, but it's like you can't really, talk is cheap when it comes to these sorts of things, but it's extremely influential at the same time. And so it's like, it's a valuable conversation to have, and I think people will enjoy it up to this point. But at this point, I want to say, um, so what does that look like in your life? Because you said that this is the thing that you're focused on.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's already changing me a lot. And I just, I've had some wonderful experiences already. Like when I went to this Austin non-event event thing, and there was like a kind of consummation because now it's like I'm hanging out with people in real life. I've met before, but this is deepening and embodied and real friendship with multiple people, and it has a in the non-local. I mean, the corner has a lot to offer. It's funny. I think it has a lot to offer, especially if you didn't have a lot going in, right? Like
Mm.
most things, right? They have a lot to offer. The less you sort of came in with. So like as a social, as an opportunity to create real friendships with people, uh, it's just given a lot already. And I think like I think I mentioned to you, like I sort of see this friendship as sort of the subject of my life in a way. I think I meant that in multiple ways. I think I meant that I am committed to the spirit of friendship in a deep way. In a religious, theological type of way, but in a way that I'm trying to live as well. And also insofar as I, am a like a creative person or a talking person or whatever. It's like it's also like the main subject that I'm most interested in, and perhaps I also think that there's an opportunity to like I would kind of put it that way over saying, it's all about my personal savior, because a lot more, I don't really think like there are people who don't care about friendship, okay, but the number is a lot smaller than people who don't care about uh, religion,
Hmm.
let alone a specific religion, let alone a specific denomination of a specific religion, let alone a specific interpretation of a specific denomination of a specific religion. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to participate in that in a much like in a broader way that adds more connection to the world. And basically, I mean, I do come from being a doomer. I think it's the only way to save the world, and also it's the only way. It's the only way and only thing worth doing, even if the material world cannot be saved. So, I, yeah, I guess I feel pretty all in on multiple levels there.
Yeah.
Is that enough of a like specific answer?
Well, I think it started specific, and you got out to maybe like the reasons why you've done some of these specific things, but like, uh so making connections, I think I connected with that because I struggled to go to church. I just like I tried that. I tried to become a pastor ultimately because I'm committed to the same exact thing that you're talking about religiously. But then I found out that the system that I was participating in was not committed to that in the same way. And they were more committed to some other things that felt to me like they were getting in the way. And maybe it's like a different recipe for bread or something. And like you got to do this convoluted thing. And I'm just like, well, what about let's cut to the chase here. Let's do relationships. Let's really affect change in people's lives. Like let's transform each other through relationship. And that's just not, it's not as like obviously effective as getting people to say the same thing. That if you can
Yeah.
just get people to say the same thing, then you can see what change is occurring in people's lives more so than the slow and arduous process of living life together with other people. There's like the Christianese is we're going to do life together. And that is good, like in theory and in concept, but what it means to people, I don't know, because it seems like it means go to church on Sunday and learn to say the same things, and then I'm okay, you're okay, and then just move on. But like I'm okay eternally, and you're okay eternally, And if you could attach that adjective to it, then it's good. But when you make things like systems ultimate, and this applies to a nation state and like national pride and even like a football team and the pride that you have as a fan of the team. It's the same thing, but like teams it's not friendship. Team support is not friendship. It is unifying, and there's a spirit of collectivism which arises, but it is different than it's different than the individual and the collective both having a handle on the truth and being able to
Yeah.
cooperate.
Yeah, and that's like where I push back when sometimes friendship is described as like this purely horizontal thing. It's like it's just philia. It's just side to side, and I don't think that. I mean, maybe that's true if you take it like in isolation, but friendship that's good, can we just say good friendship? Because as soon as you say that,
Yeah, like
I
good
think
faith.
it's on a trajectory, and it is like, you know, friendship that wants to become brotherhood, that wants to become, you know, more than brotherhood. And so, yeah, and I just, I maybe am hesitant to get too specific because it's like, well, how specific do we want to get? It's like, well, I'm making certain people as friends, we're talking right now. Perhaps we become, much closer friends over a period of years, and that whatever the relationships that ultimately, you know, because it's like when we talk in the abstract, it's like we're talking about the abstract friendship I could have, the sort of like the friendship I could have with anyone.
Right. Yes.
But the specific friendships you form in your life, the specific way that your life is playing out, that'll be the beauty and the body of your life. And part of what I'm experiencing is meeting certain people, and maybe some people I meet, and at first I'm like hesitant, and I'm like, oh, I don't know where they're coming from, like is Ethan an LLM, and then you find out that that you have so much in common, and that it's, you didn't need to be afraid, but you only learn that by trusting and going deeper into it. And then there's other people I've met where it's like they just clearly have qualities that I can learn from, and that I need to integrate in order to grow, and just meeting people, that you just want to be with, and then you see through time and whatever happens, how those relationships can grow and actually bear fruit that is good.
Mm.
And
That might
and
be it.
yeah.
The process of letting relationships bear fruit, and sort of that's the process of discernment and digestion that we've been talking about. Like, um, I'm gonna live. Something's drawing me to this person. I'm gonna live with them to the extent that they want to be lived with, and
Yeah.
and then we'll see where it goes, and we'll see for how long because things change. You move around, uh, and whatever. But it's like the process of like letting friendship grow in your life, and then surviving off of the fruit of it. Like, uh, this is
Yeah, and whether that fruit is, just video on YouTube, or whether that fruit is a video on YouTube that other people watch or chat
yeah,
about while you're talking about it, and there's some uh, it ends up calling them in some way or something that can be integrated for the good, or whether it's you start by talking to some people on some videos and then you're hanging out with them in real life, and then their significant others and wives and husbands and children, and
yeah.
there there's and they call you when they need help or
Hmm.
when they have something good to share with you. So there's a sky's the limit
Yeah.
aspect to it, you
I,
know.
I want to say something about time and about money because uh, your friends. Well, I subscribe to the idea that like all of your opportunities come through friends. Like, what do you get into? What do you experience? And then like it's all relationships. It's all connection. Who you know, not what you know. And so then there's a type of networking that people do in order to make friends with the right person to get the right opportunity and that sort of thing. And that's a cheapening, obviously, of friendship. But there is some economic value to trust and relationship, probably like an immense value. Um, but then it's hard to quantify it. Like what are you and I going to do for money together for each other? Probably like I'm useless with money, but maybe one day I'll figure something out and be like, hey, Ezra, you should try this. Uh, but then time is sort of the flip side of that. We have the phrase, time is money. Uh, and that kind of betrays our true allegiance here in our culture. But uh, friendship requires time, is what I was hearing from what we were just saying. Like you've obviously committed
Yeah.
over 2 hours here today to making a friend and talking to me. And we have some reason to believe that our friendship would be possible or valuable. But like, I have just seen, like, even in my life, one of my religious practices is taking a Sabbath. So Friday night into Saturday, we don't work. That means I don't make money. And I try not to do things that, are associated with it. I don't like to spend money really on that day. That's a common American practice. My day off is for spending all the money I made. But in reality, that's associating your day off with the work that you do. And so it's set apart, it's holy. And that doesn't mean that we just sing hymns and read scripture all day. It just is like a delighting in the life that we have. And that's time. It takes 24 hours out of my week that I can't spend on other things, but it gives me so much perspective and life and energy and even time for friends. Like I can use that time for dinner with people on Friday night or have somebody over for brunch Saturday morning. And it's like, that's extremely valuable to me in a way that I never would have perceived it to be prior to this. I would have just been, whatever, watching college football or some other thing that is actually isolating me and diminishing my quality of life. And so time is one of these things that is always associated with anything changing in someone's life. Like how you prioritize your usage of the time that you've been given is a fundamental problem in that's associated with anything that you value. But I'm thinking that especially with friendship, how do we identify the value of the time that we're spending in pursuit of something as sort of non-obviously valuable as friendship?
Yeah, it's like it's funny how useful just the framing of like judge it by its fruits is, because the the problem with the monetary system, I think, is that it assumes a kind of like that we're valuing things accurately, but it takes discernment to value things accurately. So I think when we say like judge by the fruits, it's like, well, what if we valued it accurately? What would it look like?
Yeah, thank you, Ezra, for taking this time. In light of what I just said, like it's a valuable resource. It's really the truest resource that we have, and we can spend it lots of ways. But thank you for discussing this with me for other people to hear, and I think it's a good thing to focus on friendship, and I look forward to following along as you do that in your life, and hopefully our paths will cross in person, and just continue to share in the spirit of friendship with one another as we identify its value and try to incorporate it in our lives.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and do this. And I appreciate it a lot. It's like I have my own way of talking about things. I appreciate how you went out of your way to use those ways of talking, and that made it a lot easier for me. And that helped me feel a little bit more corporeal or something. And I appreciate that.
Well, good. Anything I can do to make you feel more corporeal.